How you doing, William? Yeah.
Justin, good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to see you today.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
This is William Bragg with Kensington Community Television. We have an opportunity this morning to sit down and meet with Mr. Justin DiBerardinis, Councilwoman Maria Quinones Sanchez's office, and Justin is one of her prideful and very prudent assistants. And hopefully we'll have a chance to get some insight on exactly what Justin likes to consider himself as far as an advocate and activist. Because in my opinion, seeing this man's work has really given me great hope for the future.
Yeah.
So, Justin, how would you like to conduct this interview? I'm going to leave it up to you as far as the premise of what we've been going over. I know I've been meeting with you and the rest of the community over at the McPherson Square project. But I think it's kind of like escalated beyond that to District 7 or all in Kensington in particular, and how we can go about solidifying the communications within the area. So I know you've been working diligently with the councilwoman to get this task begun here, at least establish some foundation that can carry on. What do you think the most pivotal points of your platform is represented by?
Well, I think, especially I would say Kensington in general and McPherson specifically, I think we have, a community that, I really love, I feel very connected to, but it's a, community that has some really deep problems that are hard to root out, problems of poverty, problems of drugs and violence and sort of a certain amount of, breakdown in social order that it's hard to, when you think about them in a macro or complete sense, they're sort of hard to figure out solutions for. And I hope with McPherson Square, maybe we're setting a model of cooperation where we take on, I wouldn't say a bite size, it's a significant size, but we're sort of looking at it at the block level, at the park level, and saying, can we fix this one area? And if we can fix that area, and if we can build relationships among the people who live around that park and live around that library and the people who use that library, and we start to build, a level of unity, and we start to build a sort of, I think also something you've brought up a lot, William, is a level of trust between government and community, level of trust between institutions and community, that we can have the strength to address these problems, even if it's only just in that small geographic area, but maybe that makes a model for us going forward and something we can continue to build on and see grow in Kensington. And it's hard work, it's very labor intensive to build those relationships, but I don't really think this work can be shortcutted. I think if government or an institution just comes in and plop something down, a new playground or... Yeah,
the outside doesn't seem to be as effective.
A new code, I think one, there's always issues of sustainability, but I think there's also issues of real sort of connection, input, buy-in from the members of the community on the ground. So I think a lot of times government tends to respond in those, okay, there's a crisis, we'll throw something down, we'll maximize our press coverage or our presentation of this solution. But I think that those are sort of thin and not always the most effective. And I think what we've done at McPherson with having, really regular, extensive community meetings, having a lot of players at the table, not just the councilwoman, but having friends of the library, having impact services, having parks and recreation,
reflection.
Having and just really sitting in a way where I really think we're sort of sitting as equals and really just talking and trying to understand a problem together, right? And figuring out what some solutions might be to a problem like McPherson, whether that's safety or whether it was programming, and then figuring out how together we can do the action plan. Look, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, it's slower.
But I think you have started on the right foot. Just like with King Arthur, there are no square edges here. It's a round table where everyone is equally and appropriately represented.
I love sitting in the round. Like I never like to do a meeting where it's set up like a lecture, because you know what? People don't want to be lectured to, you know what I mean? And also when they've seen government fail so many times, they don't want to get a lecture from government on how their neighborhood's going to get fixed. They want to have a conversation.
Understand to an extent. I mean, our government is stressed because the people, all they see is the responses and reaction. And they haven't even been, there's no area of communication where they can be informed as they go along. And that absence has really led to a situation where they feel as though they're being impeded or imposed upon. And whereas we're just trying to work the system around. As at Kensington, in essence, I grew up in Kensington. And to me, and I've also lived in Jersey, I have family from Virginia and what have you. For me, the nucleus of Kensington being all that and all these different problems, it's every town USA.
Yeah.
There's no difference there. The difference is the neighbors have grown distant. And in such isolationists, you're not going to have that smooth communication come across platform. But I said, to be involved in, as I first came introduced to you through the McPherson Square project and Ms. Quiones Sanchez, just to see you come out and put that effort in and meet around the table, every nuance of what I believe as a Christian, as an American citizen, was manifested before me.
Oh, well, that's really nice of you to say.
After years of hearing, oh no, they cut you off, oh no, they
Yeah.
shut you out.
Yeah.
No, this is an active participant. And I told everybody, this is the way it works. And they said that doesn't exist anymore. And that seems to be the flaw. They don't understand that does exist every day.
Well, that's really nice of you to say. And I'll just say, I think that Councilwoman Sanchez has a real commitment to working in that kind of way. I mean, I think she's generally, built a staff that believes in that kind of work, and I think that's how we approach our work. I think we try to approach our work from a community perspective,
Yes.
not from a top-down perspective, and to try to build as much buy-in and just sort of connection to the folks who are actually going to live the issue that we're dealing with every day. You know what I mean? And I think you need to build those bridges, and you got to build those connections, because like I said, I have a very dim view of just plopping things down to solve a problem. You need that buy-in, and it's hard work and it's hard to do.
Well, Ms. Quiones Sanchez is a person that we have to hold up, just as yourself. People like you in office here that are not only sitting behind a desk inside some dusty old musty building, but you know what? You're out in the sunshine, you're out in the breeze, and more importantly, you're out in the neighborhood that you represent.
Yeah, and I think I just say I think that's something that's been a high priority for. Before I worked for her, this was my first job in politics. I came from doing community organizing work, and most of that was in Kensington. So I think that's one reason that there was a connection or a synergy with me and the council when she came into office. Was she knew that I had done community-based work, and she knew that's where sort of my heart was. And even though my title here is I've been her legislative assistant, I don't really view the job, or she doesn't want to give me a job. No one in this office has a job that's just a city hall job. Everyone has a job that is principally rooted in the neighborhoods that she serves, and then has a component here in City Hall. And I think that's the correct dynamic. I think we've been able to be effective on a lot of projects that way.
Well, it's very complementary to the area and most efficient. It's prudent, as I said. The people have got to get the stigma out of the way. It's not an outside-in solution. The people who are boots on the ground, this is an inside-out solution, where you're coming in and you're tapping into this wealth of resource, which is the people of the community, and having them join together and work in a harmonious situation. So, but as far as Justin DiBerardinis, how did you come into politics? What exactly is your vision? Because I think you do all these things with the councilman, for the councilwoman, but at the same point in time, I see a lot of there's a heart that exudes from your presence.
Oh, well, that's really that's a great compliment. So my parents both were community organizers in the Kensington area when I was growing up. My father, Michael, formed an organization called KJAC in the 70s and then into the 80s that did a lot of work around housing issues and around vacant housing in Kensington. So I grew up, around that sort of community-based work, but also then a community-based work that for my father transferred into politics. He, one of the leaders that he was working with, Ralph Acosta, was the first Latino elected to office in Pennsylvania. He became a state representative. So my father managed his campaign from being an organizer, living in that community, living in Kensington, organizing in Kensington, building community leaders, and then getting those leaders into positions in office. I mean, that was sort of the natural arc of work that I saw that both of my parents had done. I grew up in Fishtown mostly. My parents had lived in Frankfort and Cambria very early on. We moved down to Fishtown, and that's where I grew up. But out of college, my first job was doing community organizing work in Kensington. I worked for an organization called EPOP, which was the Eastern Pennsylvania Organizing Project. They sort of, in some ways, picked up when KJAC left off through the 90s and into the early 2000s. They did community organizing work. I did organizing work there around building a new Willard Elementary School. Willard was one of the oldest schools still operational in the city. It was built in the 1890s. You're a Willard alum. And so we have a new Willard building, really because honestly, there were too many kids now. That Willard building had gotten incredibly overcrowded in recent years and really just had reached sort of deplorable, mostly for lack of maintenance, but deplorable interior conditions. And the parents really wanted a new building, like a new building that would have a gym and a cafeteria and a library and a computer lab, all these things that were missing in the old Willard. And so yeah, that was in the mid 2000s. I started organizing with parents, around Emerald Street, Frankfurt Avenue, to get a new building, which this is the second year we're in of the new Willard building. So that came out of that organizing campaign. And that actually was my connection to the council. That's how I ended up here, was that work that I had done in Kensington. My old boss at that organizing project had worked on her campaign, and he suggested, I really hadn't thought of working for an elected official up until that point, but he said, you may want to sit down with her. I think that there might be a connection that can be made, because he thought that we approached our work similarly. And I think that she does approach the work in a really community-based way. She really likes to start with residents first. She likes to start with trying to build leadership, build connections to the community, and have that inform the work we do.
Well, I think this is where this is actually the hearth that breeds most of our most notable political figures. From Washington forward, even Adams sung himself into indentured servitude to get the experience. Now, such as yourself, the generational bringing forward, the grooming up into the passion, the politics of understanding the elements of it, and it's like these are the leaders who are forged of grassroots, and they go on to become bastions of foundation. Wow.
Yeah. I sometimes don't think about it in those sort of, terms. It's almost like, your parents are like, your parents are bricklayers, so you're a bricklayer, right? And I guess yes. My parents were organizers, so it seemed like a logical thing for me to do. But I also just say, I developed a real love of Kensington from seeing my parents work there. And I think even within this city, having seen some other neighborhoods, I mean, there's a real, unique diversity in that community. I almost feel like in some ways it's a community that certainly has its own identity, but they really take all comers there.
That's what I mean about Kensington. I looked at the bio. The last bio they did on was 1975. And in the bio they say that our perimeters for our boundaries are basically floating, because Kensington in of itself is a philosophy, it's an understanding, it's a way of life.
I feel it. I really do feel it when I'm there. I think, white, Latino, black, Asian, there is a certain spirit, and it can be a rough around the edges spirit for sure. But it's a spirit, with, I think people feel very comfortable with, personal expression and expressing themselves there. I really, and I think just that sort of, that racial mix, which has been there for decades now, it's always shifting, but it's been a mixed community for, I've been alive 30 years, and it's been 30 years I've seen it at least, to see it as a mixed neighborhood.
It's not just shifting, it's also growing.
Yeah.
Because out of this, the people that come in and out, the migrational people that come in and out of Kensington, that's one thing. But what happens in the natural course of growth is that some people stay.
Yeah.
And then you have a more and more multicultural base that are not, black and Hispanic and Caucasian and Asian. No, we are neighbors.
Yeah. There's a real egalitarianism there, and a real sort of shared spirit that really, I think, calls to me. It's just my favorite neighborhood to work in. We have a big district. I really enjoy all the neighborhoods that we work in, but that sort of Kensington area, I think, always has a real special place for me, and I really enjoy working there.
I think it gives an excellent foundation for any figures come in there. You have a microcosm of the entire American dream. All in one place, all at one time.
Yeah.
And here you can, and with the fruits of our founding fathers present to us, to take this and imply it and be able to expand it to actually realize the full extent. It's almost like Dr. King and what he saw.
Yeah, I think also it encompasses a lot of the challenges of America too. I think it's like Kensington reflects a lot of our promise, it reflects a lot of our challenge. In a, sort of the decline of the manufacturing America, sort of the transfer to sort of, this I think very polarized kind of society where, we're having a lot more, where the top's getting higher and there's not a lot of that meat in the middle, that great middle, section that I think middle classes that really I think defined, sort of the American identity.
We have to neutralize that just a little bit. Yeah. They went kind of overboard with all this act up. My opinion and my standpoint is that the greater separation comes from the lessening amount of effort that people are willing to put into the integrity of pursuit. They're not out there knocking on the doors no more per se. They're not out there doing the legwork that's needed to get to this point in time. They might look at someone like yourself or someone like the councilwoman and say, well, she's got a cushy job now. No. This is just another monumental standpoint in the entire path, entire journey.
Yeah.
This is a commitment that people have dedicated their entire being to.
Yeah.
And a passion of belief that they walk through with it. It's not just you show up one day and, oh, hi, here I am.
Yeah.
I'm going to step in. No. This is something not only shown from your educational pursuits, but more so on how those educational pursuits are manifested within you. You're not hanging your hat here. You're not going with philosophies. You're not going with ideologies. You're going with efficiency and respect and consideration and compassion, and above all, effectiveness.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's, I think Kensington, like I said, it reflects, the challenges of the American urban experience. It reflects, I think, a lot of the potential and promise of the urban experience, where I think the greatest promise of the urban experience is that diversity, right? I mean, I think that's really, I think, sort of like the soul and the spirit of the American city, is that meeting place of so many different cultures and coexisting and finding a shared identity. And I think that's really borne out there. And I guess, I just sort of, especially as our office as it relates to Kensington, I just want to have our office hopefully play a role or continue to play a role in trying to renew some of that promise and trying to renew some of that opportunity. I mean, I think taking that square, which is a beautiful square and a beautiful library, and I'm sure at one point was like the lynch. I'm sure when that was built, that was the place to meet in that neighborhood.
Yes.
That was the center. The McPherson Square and the McPherson Square Library was like probably the town hall of
Imagine a building that was inspired by Mr. Carnegie in his philanthropist days, and also built on the foundation of the Webster Mansion.
Yeah.
Is this the same Daniel Webster family line?
Yeah, and built by one of our city's greatest architects. I mean, Wilson Eyre is considered one of the great sort of artists in building in Philadelphia. And you go inside, you see that in there. I mean, that library is flooded with light. It's a beautiful library, and I think it had probably a position and a status, and sort of just was the center of that community, and you can still see it there, and you just want it to be that again. And I think we've done a disservice by having it be sort of where we herd the less desirable aspects of our community together, where we're sort of saying, okay, this is where the drug use is allowed to occur. This is where the drug dealing, this is where the prostitution can occur. I mean, I feel like that's a paradigm that just needs to be shifted, and I think we're starting to shift it. I do believe that.
Modern day 2012, I see Kensington is not only the embodiment of suburban America and how you can use it as a project platform or a model to address that, but more so in 2012, with the global community now coming into play and the internet and everything takes place, where we don't even have any barriers anymore. I see Kensington inside the city of Philadelphia as a project model for the entire world.
Yeah.
If we can establish this type of community here, where it's not only prosperous but also peaceful, where people have been restored with their self-respect and confident in the hope for the future, which persons such as yourself and the councilwoman are already laying out. I don't know if you have aspects or intentions on adjusting regulations. How big a project could you make the Kensington project? I
would love to see that. I really do think that there's an incredible untapped potential, physical potential, like a potential human capital there. Maybe in some ways, maybe we do think too small points, but I almost kind of feel like I think that it's sort of, you do these things one school at a time, one project at a time, and you create sort of networks of nodes of people who are getting themselves organized, who are saying, okay, this is what we want for our community, and we're going to make that happen. Like we want a park that's safe to play with our kids, that's going to be a center for youth programming, for youth activity, for congregation. We want a library that's going to be the center for learning, and we're going to make that happen. And then you do the same thing at Hissey Playground, and maybe you do the same thing to a certain extent with the parents of Willard School, and you build those nodes, and then you start to figure out how those nodes connect together to address the things that are bigger. But I think, no matter how large the problem is, the solution always has to start with that difficult and just challenging, but really, I think, rewarding work at the base of finding neighbors, building trust, building relationships between neighbors, building relationships between institutions and neighbors, and really using that sort of interlock, that fabric, that social, capital and connection that you're building as the platform and the foundation for the things you want to achieve.
Well, I understand and have seen from observation that many have come before you and with the same prospects, with the same intentions. However, what I see that you're doing differently, and I think it's a happenstance, it's time, is not only you're doing it one school at a time, because that's how they pick you apart and they deplete you down, You met at the civic heads, you met at McPherson Square, and you opened the round table for all the community. So the community itself has to come together within itself.
Yeah.
To meet at a common point where then you take the next step.
Yeah, I really...
Instead of go chasing around this and chasing around that. No, you brought it to the table. You brought it to the forefront. You set up, you bring down your papers, you sit down. This is what we have on the table.
Yeah. And I say this is I feel like our office, we don't make these things happen on our own. I just want to keep reiterating that we just have one role to play. Like when it's dealing with a project like this and it's trying to bring something back to a community, it's not something we could do on our own. We don't have that ability. We have one role to play, and like in this situation, I thought the role that the councilwoman could provide and what I could assist her in was trying to provide some leadership, trying to provide an opportunity to get all those folks together. Because there were so many people interested in McPherson, right? Friends of the library were saying, okay, we want to get to McPherson. They were calling us. They said, okay, we really want to target that. We want to really focus our resources to really bring up that library. And impacts, like we really want to make this as the year that we do that park. And Parks and Recs, like we have resources that we want to put there. We think we do need to replace trees. We think we can make investments there. So we saw all that sort of coming at the same time. And I think that's the role of an elected official, is to say, okay, let's take all these resources and let's not just have everyone working in their silo, doing their own thing and not communicating to each other. And especially, let's not have all these people doing their thing and not having it connected to the people who are going to live there and live that reality every day. We need the round table, and that's
why I appreciate you giving me this interview.
Yeah.
And how important it is that you're part of this picture. It's not you can't do it because other people are the ones who do the greater decision. No. Yeah. They're not able to do anything they have to do and need to do unless people like yourself, with that type of integrity, are fulfilling your position.
Well,
everyone's part of the same picture.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that compliment. I personally, I think that, this is how, especially a local elected official. Obviously, the bigger you get, the farther you are from the ground. But a councilwoman, that's kind of your direct connection to government. That's representation at the community level. And I think that people in those positions, they are community leaders. You know what I mean? That's who they are. And as a leader, you should be trying to not control or dominate or dictate an agenda, but really to drive as my colleague Jason just joined us. How you doing, Jason? But really try to provide that kind of leadership in these processes, to try to break down silos, to try to build connection, and to try to root the work in the folks that elected you and put you into office. And I know a lot of folks don't do that, but we should do that. I think that's what our job is, and I think we have a team of people here that view the work that way and approach it that way.
Well, as I said, I identified that fully. In 2006, 2007, I started working for the Lights of Liberty Company, doing a historical presentation, and then came all the Washington to do about Old George and what was going on with Old George. But then I think the initial, it shocks you. But as we fall into what we already know, because we have our education system, our public school systems are that built upon fact, or that built upon history. That's true. That now you understand, well, Washington was a general. He was out in the field. He wasn't running his house. That was the people whose position was around here. They ran his house. They dictated what was going on in his house. He was out taking care of business. Such as the councilwoman and you're out there taking care of business. So the person sitting in Washington or the mayor sitting upstairs, they can be doing their job from this point, because all the legwork, all the groundwork, all the meat and potatoes has to be done. There's a liaison. There's a task force in place, which is our city council, which is their reflective support staffs. It goes all the way down to the paralegal. And it all coincides. And when it works in unison, as I'm starting to see manifesting in the Kensington area, it is a symphony at play.
And I'd say something that I've learned as we've been in this project, and it sort of connects to, I know you've talked a lot about Philadelphia and the founding fathers in our history, is that McPherson Square is actually the legacy of Captain McPherson, who was a Revolutionary War figure, was a privateer, actually, is what I've learned, but that was his estate. He owned much of Kensington, was the estate, and his family committed those acreages of the square and the McPherson home to be a park and a library, and that was the will. And that was, so I mean, the legacy of that park goes all the way back to the people who founded our country and sort of those civic ideas of the common and what they stood for. And I mean, and it's this, here we are 200 plus years later, and there's this continued legacy and this continued connection back to, sort of the very roots of this country. And, I think I've said this once already, but I think there's, a promise there, a potential there that needs to be renewed. And I think we're in a process of renewal with McPherson Square. And I would love to see that, do that again and again and see that spread throughout Kensington and really be part of the renewal of that larger community. So, I feel really privileged to be able to do this work. You know what I mean? Like a lot of folks, I feel like I have the rare, job where I look forward to going to work. I look forward to doing my job. I really enjoy what I'm able to do. I really appreciate being, sort of, I feel like I'm within the public trust. I think we are civil servants here.
Well, you're not just doing a job. You're walking in history.
Well, yeah, no, it's, I don't really usually think of it in these terms. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
That's where I see it from.
Yeah.
I mean, just the whole ambiance of our government and the principle and premise for what all was laid here, and to see it played out in individual communities. It's like a microscope. You get to get up close and personal. Yeah. And you see it, the rationale, the reasonings, the logic. You see all the nuances of cause and effect. You see entire architecture at play. Yeah. And it is very beautiful, especially when you're polishing over here and you're painting over there. Yeah. It's beautiful. I think it is really a privilege to be a public servant. I think it is legitimately a privilege. I think maybe sometimes folks lose sight of that or lose track of that in these positions. But I think it's a real privilege, and it's a job that it's a career that work that I take seriously. And I'm mostly lucky to work for an elected official, to work for Councilwoman Sanchez, who really wants her staff to approach the work this way and really have it community-based. So I mean, that's what sort of allows this job to be as rewarding and fulfilling as it is. Well, my position as the founder and initiator of Kensington Community Television is just to bring onto the board the conversation that seems to take place out in the streets all over the place, where disconnect, and no voice. I don't know where they're talking about. Yeah. Just like coming through and not being able to make as much as, I don't know what they're talking about. The opportunity is there. Our platform is solid. Yeah. There's nothing to rock that platform. Yeah. The sky is the limit, and all you have to do is put one foot in front of the other. And as it plays out and manifests, I think the reconnect is going to be in place. Just like saying that you're disconnected and you don't have a voice. No, you have a voice. But then again, to exercise that voice, it takes an effort. Yeah. You have to actually do more than just sit back and say what and where and why. You have to be up close and personal and involved. Participation. It's not a Monday morning quarterback type position. This is real life. This is our families. This is our community. This is our nation. This is something where you have to get your hands dirty. You got to roll your sleeves up. But that's the beauty of it. Yeah. No. I mean, I think we all have a voice. We just have to. Everyone has ownership.
Yeah, we always have to find out how we're going to use it. That's on us. We all have a voice, but if you're using that voice in your house by yourself, then no one's going to hear it. It's the tree falling in the woods, right? Exactly. I mean, I think you have to find it. So I think with McPherson we are putting one foot in front of the other. I think we're building momentum, and I hope we're giving people an opportunity to a venue to bring that voice to the table, have it be heard, have it be part of the solution, and have them feel empowered, have them feel like they're really participating in their community and having a change. So, I think we're doing that. I think there's a lot more to do, but I think we're on a good track. And like I said, I feel privileged to be able to be there and to do that work.
Well, at this point in time, I'm not going to take up any more of your day. I know how busy you are, but I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's a little bit of reflection, and I guess self-respect through self-appreciation, realizing what each of us part is, what each of our roles are.
Yeah.
And even if it's just to take care of our children and take them to school,
Yeah.
or to make them a sandwich at lunchtime,
Mm-hmm.
or to go out and go down the corner and say, hello, the traffic light's out over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
People are actually the whole mentality of how can I make a difference?
Yeah.
That has to go out the window.
Mm-hmm.
The mentality here is, this is because we do make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a nice way to put it.
But again,
sure.
Justin, I
Yeah.
really appreciate you giving me this interview this
Yeah.
morning.
No, I was happy to take the time to do it.
And I look forward to seeing you.
Yeah.
at more of
Yeah. I'm
McPherson
sure I'll be
meetings.
seeing you very soon. Yeah. Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot, William. Yeah.
Have a good one.
Okay. You too.
I think that was perfect.
Oh, good. Well, thanks, Leon. I'm glad we were able to do it.
Absolutely perfect.